There is a strange idea that most people carry quietly through life. We believe that happiness means the absence of difficulty. We believe a good relationship is one without conflict. A meaningful career is one without exhaustion. A healthy family is one without disappointment. A peaceful life is one without pain. And because of that belief, many people spend their entire lives unconsciously rejecting reality itself. They keep trying to edit life instead of living it. They keep trying to keep the beautiful moments and delete the difficult ones, as if existence were some kind of streaming service where you can skip every uncomfortable scene and still understand the story. But you can't. You can't understand love while rejecting heartbreak. You can't understand intimacy while rejecting discomfort. You can't understand life while demanding permanent pleasure from it. And maybe that is why so many people today feel emotionally exhausted despite having more convenience, more entertainment, more comfort, and more options than any generation before them. If you've ever found yourself feeling disappointed after finally getting the thing you thought would make you happy, if you've ever questioned a relationship simply because it became difficult, if you've ever wondered why peace seems so temporary, maybe you've already brushed against this truth without fully seeing it. You probably think your suffering comes from the difficult moments themselves. But often, suffering comes from resisting the fact that difficult moments exist at all. We keep negotiating with reality. We keep saying, "I'll accept life, but only the parts I enjoy." And life does not work that way. Love does not work that way. Marriage does not work that way. Parenting does not work that way. Even our relationship with ourselves does not work that way. By the end of this video, you'll understand why contentment is not created by controlling life, but by learning how to hold all of it. The joy and the boredom, the connection and the loneliness, the excitement and the routine, the certainty and the confusion. You'll begin to see why many people are not actually unhappy because life is hard. They are unhappy because they expected life not to be hard. And once you understand that difference, something inside you begins to soften. You stop fighting reality quite so aggressively. You stop demanding perfection from people. You stop demanding perfection from yourself. And strangely, that is often where peace finally begins. One of the biggest illusions modern culture sells us is the idea that satisfaction should feel consistently intense. We are surrounded by messages telling us that if something is truly right, it should always excite us, always fulfill us, always stimulate us emotionally. Think about how relationships are portrayed online. Endless honeymoon phases, endless chemistry, endless passion, endless certainty. We are shown carefully edited fragments of people's lives and then unconsciously compare them to the ordinary texture of our own existence. And slowly, we begin to mistrust normal human experience. We mistake calm for boredom, stability for failure, routine for emotional death. A couple sits together eating dinner quietly after 10 years of marriage. No dramatic passion, no cinematic music, no fireworks, just two tired people sharing food after work while discussing bills, school schedules, and grocery shopping. Social media might call that boring. But there is something deeply sacred hidden inside that ordinary moment. Something many people fail to appreciate until they lose it. Because love was never meant to be constant emotional intensity. Love is not permanent adrenaline. Real intimacy often looks quiet. It looks repetitive. It looks inconvenient. It looks human. And this becomes one of the greatest turning points in adult life. The moment you realize that happiness is not found by eliminating difficulty, but by developing the emotional capacity to coexist with it. Think about exercise. Nobody expects the gym to feel good every second. You expect soreness. You expect discomfort. You understand that strain is part of growth. Yet emotionally, many people still believe healthy relationships should feel effortless. The moment tension appears, they assume something is wrong. But what if difficulty is not evidence of failure? What if difficulty is evidence that two imperfect nervous systems are trying to learn how to coexist? Because intimacy exposes everything. Your fears, your insecurities, your childhood wounds, your need for control, your fear of abandonment, your selfishness, your avoidance. Love is beautiful, yes, but love is also confrontation. It confronts you with yourself, and many people are not actually prepared for that. A man falls deeply in love with a woman. In the beginning, everything feels magical. They stay awake until 2 a.m. talking. They text constantly. Every small gesture feels electric. He thinks, this is it. This is what happiness feels like. But months later, life becomes more ordinary. She gets stressed from work. He becomes distracted. They misunderstand each other. Some conversations feel repetitive. Some days feel emotionally flat. Suddenly he panics. He assumes the relationship is dying because the emotional high faded. But maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe they simply left fantasy and entered reality. Maybe this is the moment real love begins. Because real love is not tested during the easy moments. Anyone can love during pleasure. Anyone can stay during excitement. The real question is, can you remain open during discomfort? Can you still choose connection during frustration? Can you hold tenderness during disappointment? This is true not only in relationships, but in life itself. There is a reason older generations often seem psychologically more resilient in certain ways, despite having harder lives materially. They expected difficulty. They did not interpret suffering as proof that life was broken. Somewhere along the way, modern culture quietly created the expectation that discomfort itself is abnormal. We became emotionally intolerant of ordinary human pain. We began treating uncertainty, loneliness, boredom, frustration, and sadness as signs that something has gone terribly wrong, rather than natural experiences woven into existence itself. Now, of course, nobody wants suffering. Nobody wakes up hoping for heartbreak or grief or conflict. But there is a profound difference between pain and resistance to pain. And many people are crushed more by resistance than by reality itself. Imagine standing in the ocean trying to stop waves with your hands. That is how many people approach life emotionally. They keep saying, this shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't feel this. My relationship shouldn't be difficult. My career shouldn't feel uncertain. Parenting shouldn't exhaust me. But the wave comes anyway, and the harder you fight reality, the more exhausted you become. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It does not mean tolerating abuse or abandoning growth. Acceptance means understanding that life contains opposites. Always. Every beautiful thing carries weight alongside it. To love deeply is also to risk grief deeply. To become successful is also to carry pressure. To become a parent is also to lose freedom. To build intimacy is also to experience vulnerability. To live fully is also to experience pain. And perhaps maturity is not learning how to avoid these truths, but learning how to stop being shocked by them. A young mother sits alone in her car after dropping her children at school. The house is messy. She hasn't slept properly in months. Her body is exhausted. She scrolls through social media and sees another mother smiling perfectly in a spotless kitchen while making homemade organic lunches with soft piano music in the background. Suddenly shame enters. Why does motherhood feel so hard for me? She wonders. But what she does not see are the arguments, the tears, the loneliness, the exhaustion behind that edited image. She compares her full reality to someone else's performance. And this is happening everywhere now. People are not merely living life anymore. They are comparing their behind-the-scenes existence to everyone else's highlight reel. No wonder contentment feels difficult, because contentment cannot survive comparison for very long. And comparison always creates selective vision. You begin wanting only the beautiful parts of another person's life while ignoring the cost attached to them. You admire someone's success but not their stress. You admire someone's marriage but not their compromises. You admire someone's confidence but not the rejection they survived. You admire someone's peace but not the grief that taught them perspective. Everything comes as a package. Everything. Yet modern culture constantly teaches us to separate things that cannot actually be separated. Pleasure without responsibility. Success without sacrifice. Love without discomfort. Confidence without vulnerability. Growth without pain. But life does not split itself into neat categories like that. Life arrives whole. And perhaps one of the deepest forms of wisdom is learning how to receive it whole. There is an old pattern that quietly destroys many relationships. One partner unconsciously believes that love should permanently remove loneliness, insecurity, or emotional discomfort. So whenever those feelings reappear, they blame the relationship itself. Maybe I'm with the wrong person. Maybe we lost the spark. Maybe this isn't true love anymore. But no human being can permanently regulate another person's inner world. No marriage can eliminate existential uncertainty. No partner can heal every wound inside you. Sometimes we expect relationships to do something they were never designed to do. We expect another person to rescue us from being human. But being human includes loneliness sometimes. Being human includes confusion. Being human includes emotional inconsistency. Being human includes moments where you feel disconnected even from people you love deeply. And strangely, accepting this often creates more intimacy, not less. Because when you stop demanding perfection from love, you finally create space for real love to breathe. A husband comes home stressed after work and speaks sharply to his wife. She feels hurt, defensive, unseen. Now there are two paths available. One path says, this relationship is terrible. We shouldn't have conflict. The other path says, we are two imperfect humans under pressure trying to love each other while carrying invisible emotional histories. One path creates resentment. The other creates compassion. This does not mean accepting mistreatment endlessly. It means understanding context, understanding humanity, understanding that love is not the absence of friction. Love is often the willingness to repair after friction. And repair is sacred. In fact, many psychologists would argue that strong relationships are not relationships without rupture. They are relationships where rupture can safely be repaired. That changes everything, because suddenly conflict stops being proof of failure and becomes part of emotional intimacy itself. Children teach us this truth naturally. A child learning to walk falls hundreds of times, but the child does not interpret falling as evidence they should stop trying. Falling is included in learning, yet adults often approach emotional life differently. One heartbreak and they conclude love is dangerous forever. One disappointment and they conclude happiness is impossible. One betrayal and they conclude trust is foolish. Somewhere we stopped allowing emotional growth to be messy. But all growth is messy. All growth. Even healing. Especially healing. Healing is not becoming someone who never struggles again. Healing is becoming someone who no longer panics when struggle appears. That is a very different thing. Many people spend years trying to create a perfectly controlled life because they believe certainty will finally make them peaceful. But certainty is fragile. Control is fragile. Life changes constantly. People change constantly. Bodies age, jobs disappear, children grow up, parents die, plans collapse, economies shift, health changes overnight. If your peace depends entirely on life staying predictable, peace will always remain temporary. But acceptance creates a different kind of stability. A deeper stability. Not the stability of controlling life, but the stability of learning you can survive life. That changes the entire emotional experience of existence. There is a reason some people remain emotionally grounded even during hardship, while others collapse during relatively minor discomfort. Often it is not because one person has less pain. It is because one person stopped expecting reality to obey their preferences. And that sounds harsh at first. But hidden inside that realization is enormous freedom. Because once you stop demanding that life feel good all the time, you start appreciating the moments when it does. The morning coffee tastes different. The laughter of your child feels sacred. The silence after an argument feels meaningful. A simple walk feels enough. You stop chasing permanent emotional highs and begin noticing ordinary beauty. And ordinary beauty is where most of life actually happens. Not during vacations, not during achievements, not during peak moments, but during Tuesday evenings. Morning sunlight through windows, conversations in kitchens, small acts of forgiveness, shared exhaustion, quiet companionship. Modern culture often trains people to overlook these moments because they are not dramatic enough. But a meaningful life is not built from constant emotional peaks. It is built from thousands of ordinary moments accepted fully. A father works long hours for years trying to provide for his family. He dreams constantly about future happiness. Once I make enough money, then we'll relax. Then we'll enjoy life. But one evening he notices his daughter is suddenly taller, older, different. He realizes entire years disappeared while he was mentally living somewhere else, chasing a future version of happiness instead of inhabiting the imperfect present one. This happens to so many people. We postpone life while trying to perfect it. We postpone gratitude while trying to secure certainty. We postpone intimacy while trying to eliminate vulnerability. We postpone joy while trying to eliminate risk. And suddenly, years are gone. What if contentment is not created by finally getting the perfect life, but by learning how to stop rejecting the life you already have? Not because your life is perfect, not because suffering is beautiful, but because reality is already here whether you resist it or not. This idea becomes especially important in marriage, because marriage exposes a painful truth many people avoid. Eventually, love becomes less about emotion and more about choice, less about intensity and more about presence, less about fantasy and more about acceptance. You begin seeing each other fully. The beautiful parts, the annoying parts, the tired parts, the wounded parts, the repetitive stories, the emotional patterns, the insecurities, the flaws. And then a deeper question emerges beneath romance itself. Can you still love what is real after fantasy disappears? Because fantasy loves perfection. Reality loves humanity. And humanity is messy. This is why some of the strongest couples are not the couples who never struggled. They are the couples who stopped treating struggle as abnormal. They stopped expecting perpetual emotional ecstasy and started building emotional endurance instead. Endurance. That is the word modern culture rarely celebrates. But endurance matters. The ability to stay emotionally open during difficult seasons. The ability to remain kind during stress. The ability to continue communicating during misunderstanding. The ability to accept temporary emotional weather without catastrophizing the entire relationship. This is not glamorous, but it is profound. There is also something deeply human about realizing that every meaningful commitment eventually contains boredom somewhere inside it. That sounds depressing until you understand what boredom actually means. Boredom often means stability, familiarity, safety, predictability, the very things people desperately crave after chaos. Yet because modern life overstimulates us constantly, many people have become addicted to emotional novelty, endless scrolling, endless stimulation, endless newness. We trained our nervous systems to expect permanent excitement, and then ordinary life starts feeling emotionally insufficient. But peace was never meant to feel like fireworks. Peace often feels quiet, and people who cannot tolerate quietness often keep sabotaging stability because it does not emotionally intoxicate them enough. This is why some people unconsciously create drama in healthy relationships. Calm feels unfamiliar. Calm feels suspicious. Their nervous system learned chaos as normal, so they mistake emotional instability for passion. They confuse anxiety with chemistry. They confuse unpredictability with love. But mature love often feels different from dramatic love. It feels safer, softer, less performative, less addictive, more real. And real things are not always emotionally intense every second. A tree does not grow dramatically overnight. Yet year after year, it becomes stronger quietly. Relationships are similar. Life is similar. Meaning itself often grows slowly, invisibly, beneath the surface. The problem is that modern culture rewards visible excitement far more than invisible depth. We celebrate beginnings more than maintenance. We celebrate attraction more than commitment. We celebrate achievement more than consistency. But consistency quietly shapes almost everything meaningful in human life. A healthy body, a stable marriage, a close friendship, a peaceful mind, a meaningful career, all built slowly. And slowly is difficult for modern people because we live inside a culture of immediacy, immediate entertainment, immediate gratification, immediate validation, immediate distraction. But emotional fulfillment often operates on entirely different timelines. You do not build trust instantly. You do not build wisdom instantly. You do not build intimacy instantly. You do not build peace instantly. These things require staying through seasons, and staying is becoming rarer, because leaving often feels easier than tolerating discomfort. Now, sometimes leaving is necessary. Some relationships truly are unhealthy. Some environments truly are destructive. Acceptance should never become an excuse for abuse or emotional neglect. But many people today leave not because something is broken beyond repair, but because they expected human relationships to feel emotionally smooth all the time. And no relationship between two nervous systems will ever remain smooth permanently. No life will, no marriage will, no career will, no identity will. Everything alive contains movement, tension, change, friction. The question is not how to eliminate friction from life. The question is whether you can stop interpreting friction as proof that life is failing. There is something almost spiritual about this realization, because eventually you begin understanding that acceptance is not resignation. Acceptance is intimacy with reality. It is saying yes to the fullness of existence instead of constantly trying to negotiate your way out of its difficult parts. And strangely, this creates more emotional freedom than control ever could. Because when you stop fearing difficult emotions so intensely, they stop controlling your life quite as much. You stop panicking during sadness. You stop catastrophizing during conflict. You stop assuming discomfort means disaster. You breathe differently. You live differently. You love differently. You become less fragile emotionally because you are no longer demanding emotional permanence from temporary experiences. A rainy day no longer feels like the end of the world. An argument no longer feels like the death of love. An uncertain season no longer feels like permanent failure. Everything becomes more fluid, more human, more survivable. And maybe this is what true emotional maturity really is. Not becoming permanently happy, not becoming permanently calm, but becoming able to hold life without constantly fighting its changing nature, to hold grief without losing gratitude, to hold uncertainty without losing hope, to hold disappointment without losing love, to hold imperfection without losing meaning. That is strength, real strength, not domination, not emotional suppression. Not endless positivity, but emotional spaciousness, the capacity to remain open to life even when life is difficult. Because eventually, everyone learns the same truth in different ways. Life will break your expectations repeatedly. Relationships will disappoint you sometimes. Your own mind will confuse you sometimes. The people you love will fail you sometimes. You will fail yourself sometimes. And still, there will be sunsets and laughter, and music in kitchens, and moments of forgiveness, and quiet mornings, and unexpected tenderness, and people who stay beside you through difficult seasons, and small beautiful moments that make existence feel worthwhile again. But you only fully experience these moments when you stop demanding that life contain only them. Because happiness isolated from sadness becomes fragile. Love isolated from difficulty becomes fantasy. Peace isolated from uncertainty becomes impossible. Everything meaningful contains opposites. Always. And perhaps the deepest form of contentment comes not from finally controlling life, but from finally allowing life to be whole. Not selectively, not conditionally. Not only when it feels good, but fully. Messy, beautiful, painful, sacred, human, just as it is. Please comment, share, and subscribe for